Be entertaining and informative to our viewers and listening audience.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's 7 o'clock and time for On the Spot with David Rogers. And now, here he is, Mr. Friday Night, the show pony himself, the man, the dream, the legendary David Rogers.
Introducing On the Spot with David Rogers. And who you all have been waiting for, David Rogers.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Rogers. Welcome to On the Spot with David Rogers. This beautiful Tuesday night, August the 13th, 2024. As you can see, we got the green screen behind us right here. Dave's working on trying to get some of the background and some of the other stuff that we have for you. But anyway, welcome into the show. Didn't have a show last week. I'm glad we're able to come on this week for you guys. And I've got a special guest. You can see a little bit of him right there. We've got Brian Kramer. Come on in, Brian, since we got you in there. So we got the Brian Kramer, the state attorney for the 8th Judicial Circuit Court. And not really court, but circuit. So, and he'll explain that as we get into the show. No Byron Bagwell tonight, as he's got a work commitment that he's got to do. Austin Stevens won't be here with us tonight as well. He's got another commitment as well. But we do have our director and our producer. He is the dancing destroyer himself, Super Dave Holland. Dave, say hello to everybody, David.
Hello, everybody. How you doing?
There you go. Hey, a week hiatus, David. We had the storm last week, so we wasn't able to do a show last week. And I hope everybody made it through the storm okay, and everybody's getting back to some kind of normalcy. We decided to cancel the show, David, because of that. We were supposed to have Mr. Kramer on last week, but due to the storm, we wasn't able to do that. But we do have him this week, so. Again, be thinking of something. If you got any questions, we'll be monitoring those comments, myself and David, and even Brian is going to be looking at them, and he'll answer anything that that you put out there to an extent. But we'll see what happens. And if he don't like the question, he's like, okay, I won't answer that one. But I know, Brian, we've been talking a few minutes here, and he'll pretty much answer any kind of questions that you got. So, again, welcome into the show, On the Spot with David Rogers. Glad that you could be here this beautiful Tuesday night. Let's get the show started as we always do, with our prayer and our pledge and our patriotic quote of the night. If everybody will bow their heads, please. Our righteous Heavenly Father, let us once think again for a wonderful and glorious day you've given us, dear Lord. Thank you for this time that we have together as we bring you another show to our viewers. And let our viewers take whatever we say, dear Lord, and just decipher it and disseminate it for themselves, dear Lord, and take it as they need to, dear Lord. Thank you for letting us live in the greatest country in the world today, the United States of America, the most freest and powerful country in the world today, dear Lord. Yes, we have our own issues and our own problems. But with your guiding and your healing hand, dear Lord, you can touch this great nation, touch our politicians, each and every one of them, touch all the people that live in this great country, dear Lord, that we can make it great and powerful again. Thank you for anyone that is serving in our military, dear Lord, all our military members, past and present, as they've given, most back in the day have given their life, the sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice, their lives and their blood for this great country. Anybody that's serving right now abroad or here, dear Lord, that you keep a hedge of protection over them and bring them home safely to their families, dear Lord. Thank you for our first responders, each and every one of those men and women, dear Lord, that's out there protecting and serving us in our community each and every day, whether it's here locally or whether it's anywhere in this great country, dear Lord, that you keep a hedge of protection over them and keep them safe as they're keeping us safe from harm's way, dear Lord. Thank you for the food that we receive each and every day that goes to the nourishment of our bodies and our bodies to thy service. Any spoken or unspoken prayer request, dear Lord, touch each and every one of them. You're the ultimate healer. You're the ultimate comforter, dear Lord. You know what's on their mind and in their hearts, and you can make it well for them again. Thank you again for just letting us have this great time. This show that we're going to be doing, dear Lord, this day that you've given us, and the rest of the week that will be coming upon us. We ask for these things in your Son's name, Jesus Christ, and the congregation says, amen. All right, we're going to stand for our pledge, and I'm going to ask Mr. Dave Holland if he would lead us in our pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. Again, thank you very much. My name is David Rogers. I am here at our studio here in beautiful Stark, Florida. As you can see to my left, there is no Byron Bagwell tonight, but I do have a special guest, Mr. Brian Kramer, State Attorney for the 8th Judicial Circuit, and we'll get into that here in just a few minutes. Dave Holland, our producer and director, he is here with us tonight. David, again, say hello to everybody, David.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody.
Hey, we had a great show last night, David, as we was at the Downtown Grill and Tornado Sneak Peek. You know, everybody's interested in football. Football season right around the corner. It's basically here. Preseason games going on in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
High school football starts this Friday night as a lot of preseason classics are going on. We have one of our own, and we're going to be playing Lake City, Columbia, as they come here, and they have been, man, they've been bending my ear, David, at work. Hey, I'm telling you right now, all them Lake City boys, I'm just not saying anything. I'm just going to keep quiet, and I'm going to broadcast the game along with you and Byron, and we'll just see what happens.
That's like being in a different camp.
Yeah.
You're an outsider. You're a tornado and a...
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm a Tornado, and I like the Seminoles. I don't know what team Brian follows, but, you know, I'm a Seminole fan, so is Byron. But, look, at the end of the day, you know, like I said, football season's right around the corner. We've got a great game that we're going to be broadcasting. It won't be on the radio, though, David. This is one that won't be on the radio. We're doing this one live through Facebook, through On the Spot with David Rogers, and of course all our other pages.
Yep.
So we'll be doing that game there, and then of course we'll go to Baker County next week for the first regular season game as we go travel to the Baker County Wildcats.
Yeah.
If y'all don't know what I'm talking about, you know, and Brian, I don't know how much you follow football, how much you follow this area, which I know you do because this is your area. The Bradford Tornadoes made it to the state championship game last year. Lost to the Cocoa Tigers 20-6 in a very, very hard-fought game. They've gotten us 2 years in a row. That team is always nationally ranked. They're state ranked all the time. As a matter of fact, they're starting off number one in the 1 or 2 in the state this year, and they happen to be in our class, Brian. I don't know why they got this team in Class 2A. I don't know what the FHSA is thinking. Those guys are powerhouse, and our boys fought them 2 years in a row, about as hard as you can fight anybody. And maybe this year is a turning point, but we should have a very good team coming back. Head coach Jamie Rogers, who's been with us for 2 years, going on his 3rd year. We've got this team rocking and rolling and gelling like you wouldn't believe. And so we're hoping that we have a good game. But those guys, I work over at New Millennium in Lake City. Do you know where that's at?
I don't.
Okay, so New Millennium in Lake City is off of 100, and then, you know, it turns into 100A, and it goes to Bascom Norris Drive in that area. That's where that plant sits. But I've been working there since 2015, like I told you. And those boys, man, they love their Tigers. We love our Tornadoes, and we got people all around the area that work over there that follows different teams. But, yeah, we've got a coach that works there. I know Brian Allen, the head coach over at Columbia, very well, and of course, equipment manager works with me. But they've been bending my ear, and I'm just trying to just plug my ear and go, okay, we'll just see what happens. But it ought to be an entertaining game. So all you Tornado fans, I was asked if I would, and I will. Please go out this Friday night and watch a great, entertaining ball game this Friday night as we play the Columbia Tigers. It's been a long time since we played them, so we'd like for you to go out there and fill the stadium and show them how we did it last year, and hopefully we can have a repeat, maybe even a little more as we get into the football season. Byron Bagwell should have sent me, David, a quote of the night. Let's see if that's the case. Well, Brother Byron did not send me a quote of the night. That's okay. We're going to go ahead and skip that part. That's usually Byron's segment. So we're going to go ahead and skip the quote of the night and get into some official business. And, of course, right now, as y'all all know, we've got a big-time election coming up.
That's right.
Not only on the national level, not only on the state level, but regional as well. And if you haven't already voted, early voting is going on right now. Of course, Tuesday is going to be the official primary voting, most of the primary this coming up Tuesday. So I urge you to please go and vote. That is your constitutional right, and we need every vote. Every vote counts. You know, some people, Brian, tell me, man, votes don't count, my vote don't count, this and that. Hang on just a minute. Right in the middle of the show, sir. That's okay, buddy. My weather guy just called me. That's all right. Hey, it makes for good. It makes good for a good show. Okay, buddy. No worries. I got you. Tune in. All right. Bye. That was my weather guy, Austin Stevens. He forgot. The show was going on. One of our own guys, David, and here we go. Improving on the show. How about that, Brian? I can tell you this. So that's the way this goes. Yeah. But anyway, you know, we was going back. Some people says, well, my vote don't count. This and that. And then, you know, I like to sit there and tell those guys, and I'd like to get your opinion on that, on this. Again, my special guest, Brian Kramer, State Attorney for the 8th Judicial Circuit. To me, every vote counts, and whether you vote Republican, whether you vote Democrat, whether you vote Independent, each and every vote matters and counts. And I say, if you vote and it doesn't turn out the way that you particularly like it,
right,
you have a right to say something. But if you don't vote, to me, you don't have an argument with me or anybody else that voted, because you didn't vote. You didn't put your particular vote to whoever you think was the best candidate for whatever that position is, and now you're going to try to complain to me. And that's my biggest point that I have with people is, we're not doing this, we're not doing that. And did you vote? No. Explain why voting is so very
First
important.
of all, just on your last point, you know, one thing we always have to remember as public officials is this: everybody deserves the best quality of service from their public officials.
Yes.
And we may not be happy with people who don't exercise their right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't, as a public official, lessen my expectation of what I owe to the public as terms of the service that they deserve.
Right.
Now, I 100% agree with you that everyone should exercise their right to vote if they can, you know, and if they're able to get to the polls and vote. You know, we have many examples locally of instances where every vote did matter. My good friend, the sheriff of Gilchrist County, Bobby Schultz, in his original election was elected by 38 votes in a county of 10,000 people.
Right.
You know, so it's really hard to tell someone, you know, that my vote doesn't matter when you have examples of that in our own backyard. We know that the 2000 presidential election really turned on what happened in our area, because it was 500 votes in the state of Florida that decided the Bush versus Gore. That's 500 votes out of, at that point, a state of, I don't know, probably 14 million people in 2000.
At 2000, yeah, right.
500 votes. And, you know, there was, you know, there were things happening. There were candidates appearing in our area who may have swayed voters' opinions. There was a rally for Ralph Nader,
right,
in Gainesville,
mm-hmm,
with 5,000 people attending.
right,
Right, and those people probably took votes from more so from one side than the other.
right.
Right, so you just can't think that it doesn't matter. It really does matter. The proof is it does matter.
It does, and you know, we always say, Brian, that every election is important, but I think in this particular election, it is very important for people to go out there and vote, especially if you don't like, and again, I'm not going to get into any national politics because I want to hear about what you do, because I'm very interested in what you do. But, you know, everybody sees what's going on in the country right now as far as an overall picture. Right. And you need to exercise your vote. If you don't like what's going on, get out there and vote for you think who's going to be the best candidate to run this country.
Right.
And you should do that.
You know, and another reason you should do it is, you know, when you were giving us the prayer,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you were talking about the people who defend us,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're in the military, whether they're in law enforcement, or the people who keep us safe, you know, with our EMS partners like that. And we should remember that in honoring those people, one of the reasons they serve is so that we have the right to a free democracy, that we have the right to pick our leaders, and if we don't we honor their service by
Right.
doing the things that are important as citizens, because not all of us can serve.
Right.
Right. Not all
No,
of us
no.
are going to serve.
No.
And it is honoring their commitment and their service to exercise our rights and our responsibilities to our civic duty as citizens. That's another good reason to vote.
Brian, that you bring up a great point, and I'm very. I've had people tell me, and again, to give you a little bit of background, because we didn't get a chance to talk a whole bunch about as far as why this show is set up the way it is. But I've had some people come and say, well, I'm not going to watch the first opening of your show because you do the prayer, the pledge, and the patriotic quote at night. Okay, I have no problem with that. Hey, if you don't like that part or whatever, hey, tune in after that's done. I'm not trying for nobody to watch the show. We want everybody to watch the show because I think there's something for everybody that we do each and every week, whether it's sports you like, whether it's national politics, whether it's the weather, whether it's some of the upcoming events that we have in the region. Somebody is always going to find something that they're going to like about the show. But if you don't like the opening, that's fine. But I served in the military. David served in the military, and we both served in the U.S. Navy. And we've talked this many times. I would go back if they call me back right now. I don't know what I'd do at 62 years old. Maybe put some paper. But hey, if they need me back, I would definitely go back. And that's how much I love this country. How much I love the people in this country. Again, like I said, and I think you'll agree, this is the greatest country in the world today. I know we got our own issues and our own problems, things that we got to fix, but it's the most freest and most powerful country in the world today.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and I'm just glad and honored that I can be living here and able to do this show and express my freedom of speech and some of the things that I believe in. I can do it on this show, and like you said, our military, past and present, has given us that right to be able to do the things that we do. But anyway, glad that y'all can be on. I'll get it to some of the comments that are going on. Got Mr. Brian Kramer. Dave Holland is with us. No Byron Bagwell tonight and no Austin Stevens, but I'll have the weather for you here in a little bit. Want to welcome in Mr. Brian Kramer. You've already heard him speak. He's a state attorney for the 8th Judicial Circuit. Brian, glad that you could be here, sir. Like we always do with all our guests, tell everybody just a little bit about yourself and some of your personal things, some of the things that you like to do, and something about your family, and then we'll get into some of the other tougher questions.
Okay, sure. So, you were talking about the high school football. I'm a Buchholz Bobcat.
Okay. Nothing wrong with Buchholz.
I've been in this area for 55 years. I went to Terwilliger Elementary School in Gainesville. I went to Fort Clark Middle School in Gainesville.
Oh, no, exactly where those
Then
are.
I went to Buchholz. I went to Santa Fe Community College.
Okay.
Then I went to the University of Florida to get my undergraduate degree, and then Stetson University College of Law in St. Petersburg to get my Juris Doctorate. I graduated from law school in 1993. I was a class of 1986 at Buchholz High School.
Okay.
My dad is a physician. He's 86 years old, and he still practices every day.
86 years old.
86 years old. He'll be 86 October 17th. He's 85.
Where does he practice at, bro?
So he's right behind North Florida Regional Hospital.
Really?
His name's Dr. Dean Kramer. I couldn't be more proud of him. He is a gastroenterologist, and he's been working in this area as a gastroenterologist since 1972. My mom was a college instructor. She retired in 2017 after serving at Santa Fe Community College from 1969 until 2017. And she was an instructor in humanities, ethics, and art, other art type classes there. And I live in Gainesville, so we'll talk about the 8th Judicial Circuit, but Gainesville is the center of the 8th Judicial Circuit. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And I'm married to my wife. Her name's Annette. We've been married for 28 years, 29 years in December. We have 2 beautiful, incredibly smart daughters. One of my daughters is in dental school at Columbia in New York, and my other daughter is in medical school at the University of South Florida in Tampa. I've been a lawyer, as I said, since 1993. I was barred in 1993, so I'm in my 31st year, 30th year, 31 years, September of this year. And in that time frame, I have spent a little over 25 of those years as a prosecutor.
Wow.
So I started my career as a public defender because I was unable to get a job as a prosecutor in
Right.
1993. It was, I don't know if you remember, it was not a good year for getting jobs. So
No,
I took
it was
the job-
not.
I took the job I could get, which
Yeah,
at
right.
that time was a public defender. So one of the things I'm most proud of is, professionally, is this pin that's on my jacket right here, which represents what you get after 25 years of service to the state of Florida. So I've served as an assistant public defender, I've served as an assistant state attorney, and now I'm the state attorney for the 8th Judicial Circuit. And I've also, a couple of times, been in private practice doing mostly civil litigation.
Okay.
So I've done some civil litigation as well, but the vast majority of my service has been as a prosecutor, 25 years of the almost 31 years that I've been practicing law. I love it. I love being a prosecutor. It has been the calling for me, and I think that most people who know me have felt like I do a pretty good job of it, and that I'm very straightforward, very ethical in the prosecution that we do. And of course, the downside of prosecution is you're making half the people of the world upset most of the time because you prosecute.
Of course, right.
But we serve our victims. That's what we're here for, and I think we do it well.
And again, Brian Kramer, our special guest, and he just told you a little bit about himself. And you were speaking about the 8th Judicial Circuit,
Sure.
and you're the state attorney for the 8th Judicial Circuit. You was explaining to me and David a little bit before we went on the air what that encompasses. Why don't you tell everybody
Sure.
the area that encompasses, and who else you got working with you in that area?
Okay, so first of all, you have to understand that Florida, for the terms of prosecution, courts, and public defense,
Right.
is separated into 20 separate judicial circuits.
Whew.
So
Okay.
some of those judicial circuits have one county. So Dade County is a single judicial circuit.
Right.
They're the Palm Beach County, most of the South Florida counties. Some of them have as many as 7 counties. So our country cousins to the north, which is the 3rd Judicial Circuit,
Right.
where John Durrett is the state attorney, he has 7 counties. I have 6. So
Good.
my counties are Alachua, Union, Baker, Bradford, Levy, and Gilchrist.
Okay.
So the area that I cover runs from Inglis on the Gulf Coast.
Gulf Coast, mhm.
Right, Inglis, Yankeetown area on the
Right.
Gulf Coast, all the way up to Glen St. Mary at the Georgia border. And so it is a big swath right through the middle of north central Florida. Takes about 3 hours to drive from one end to the other. If you're trying to drive it in one go, it's quite a ways. And there are about 400,000 constituents that I serve. And my job is that like the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer for Bradford County.
Right.
Gordon Smith is.
Right.
I am the chief law enforcement officer for the circuit.
Okay.
So, but my role is a little different. We don't go around with cop cars and
Right.
arrest people. I do have sworn law enforcement officers who work for me, but that's not their primary responsibility.
Right.
My primary responsibility is that we prosecute about 18,000 individual criminal cases per year.
Whew.
So that can range from driving without a valid driver's license to first-degree murder and everything in between. So your question was, who are the people that do that, right?
Right.
So I have about 140 employees.
Okay. Wow.
We should have about 45 lawyers. Right now, we have around 41. We would like to have more, but that's a different topic. And then the rest of those folks are support staff, and they fall into a couple of categories. We talked about investigators,
Right.
sworn law enforcement officers who work for me as investigators. Then I have people who would traditionally be known as legal secretaries. We
Right.
don't really think of them that way anymore. We call them caseload managers. But they were, at a time, legal secretaries. We have victim services. We have folks who work in victim services. We have a robust IT team because everything we do is electronic. We don't have any paper files. We have what we call our EDPDI, Electronic Data Processing and Document Imaging team.
Right.
And they, obviously, I will tell you, one of the things that's a big issue in my office is information management. As an example, in 2023, we received 26,000 pieces of digital forensic evidence per month.
Phew.
Okay, so that would be anything that's coming to us as like a police report, a body camera, a
cell phone
report, a cell phone dump, a cell phone image, whatever it is.
Right.
26,000 individual pieces per month. So if you think about that, we're downloading and processing, because it's not just downloading, it's download it, but then you've got to move it from the download into where it lives, right? Where it's going to be part of the criminal justice system. And because there's only about 22 work days a month on average.
Right, average.
So we're running about 1,200 pieces of digital forensic evidence a day, right? So that's that. We have a big crew of folks who work on that, and then I have people who work in finance, right? So
right.
The finance team to handle the fact that we have to pay people and we have to pay for things, that type of thing. So that's really the majority of the people who work for me.
Right.
The prosecutors who work for me, we are kind of like the military in this sense. It takes at least 2 people to put 1 prosecutor in courtroom.
Right.
Right? Okay, and so everybody who works for me really works for the same reason. If you're not prosecuting a case, you work to support a prosecutor. That's what you're doing, right? So our prosecutors range from people who are just out of law school, who we hire right out of law school,
right,
to the most senior person. I have my most senior lawyer is in his 36th year of prosecution, so he's more senior to me in that regard. And then, of course, we have a wide range of employees. I'm very proud that my senior employee has 52 years with our office.
Wow.
I was 4 when she started.
52 years.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Very proud of her. She's very dedicated to the office, always has been.
How many lawyers do you have?
We have 40.
And
we should have about 45. We have 41. Depends how you want to count. You want to count me as a lawyer? I handle cases, but not enough that I would count myself in that.
Right.
In that number.
so if you added all their years of experience, have you
Goodness, yeah.
thought how many years that
It would be in the
be?
hundreds.
That's what
right?
I'm thinking.
Yeah, it would be well into 300 or 400.
Yeah, you got a
so.
lot of support there.
Right. And one of the issues in our business is that, you can't go out. When you're looking at a very serious case, right? Somebody's been seriously injured. There's serious damage that's been done.
Right.
The people expect that we're going to do a very competent and professional job in handling that case. You can't go out and find and hire a prosecutor with 15 years experience.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You have to cultivate them. You have to grow them. You have to create a culture where those people want to stay with your office and be with you and get to that point in their career where they are equipped to handle the most serious cases. And going out and finding one and buy, to hire one off the free market, very, very difficult. Very difficult.
So you were talking, I'm sorry, Dave. So you were talking about all these people that you got working for you within the 8th Judicial Circuit.
Right.
So explain to people, you were talking about your finance team and paying people, where does the funding come from?
Yes.
As far as keeping your office running, keeping everybody paid, keeping the things that you need to do on prosecuting cases? Where does that money come from?
Now, I don't want to put all your viewers to sleep.
Okay, all right. So okay.
I will not go deeply into
Right.
how all this works, but I'll break it down like this. We are 96% salary. Okay, we're
Right.
about 4% costs.
Okay.
So the biggest expense we have by far is human beings.
Right.
How are those folks paid? They are paid by the state of Florida, and they are paid out of general revenue mostly, And then we also have to earn through cost of prosecution.
Right.
So every case where there's a person who is pled guilty, found guilty, put on probation, what have you, there's a statutory requirement that they pay a cost of prosecution.
Right.
We have to earn that portion to pay our staff fully.
Okay, I get it.
So
Okay.
there's, if you really split it out, it comes about 85-15.
Okay.
Right? My
Yeah.
budget for the year is, a yearly budget is around $12 million. Then the 4% comes from the counties. So
Okay.
the counties are responsible for providing us an office, providing us the electricity, the phone system, and the computers that run the office under what we call Article 5. And so we have to have a relationship with every county and every county commission. We have a budget with every county commission. We have a budget analyst in every county that we work with. And then we have what we call our shared IT budget, because efficiency requires that we run one, we don't have 6 IT programs, right?
Right.
We have one IT program, and it is spread out to all of our offices. And so that budget is spread amongst all 6 counties, and they pay on the basis of their population.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so you being the head, of course, and we'll talk about the election that's coming up here in just a few minutes. You being the head state attorney for the 8th Judicial Circuit, as you just explained.
Right.
Do you have to prepare that budget? Or is that budget already prepared, or is it a combination?
It's a combination of things, because this can get a little weedy. I apologize. So
It's okay.
The Florida legislature, and rightfully so, they don't want to deal with me individually, right? Because
Right.
there's 20 of us.
There's 20, right.
And they already have a lot of entities that are coming to them and asking them to do things for them, right?
Right.
So they created an entity called the Florida Prosecuting Attorneys Association.
Right.
Which is it's like an umbrella group that sits over all of the prosecutors.
Right.
And we can make specific budget requests, but budgeting all runs through for the state government, all runs through the Florida Prosecuting Attorneys Association. So when the legislature makes an allocation of funds, they make it to all 20 of us, and then through what's called the Justice Administration Commission and the Florida Prosecuting Attorneys Association, that money is divided out however the legislature tells us to.
It tells you to,
Right.
okay.
Sometimes they'll tell us, hey, it's 3% across the board for every employee, right?
Right.
And then our folks around here would be getting the same thing. We have a lot of state workers in Bradford County.
Sure.
And sometimes they'll say, well, it's to address workload issues, like we've gotten a big increase in workload.
Right.
So they might give specific money to my particular circuit for that, or they might give it statewide and divide it up accordingly. Sorry.
As a state attorney,
Right.
You handle certain situations, criminal, personal injury,
Nope.
No.
whatever.
Just criminal.
So it is almost exclusively criminal,
Yeah.
and we exclusively prosecute. So the public defender, our public defender, her name is Stacy Scott, she is responsible for public defense.
Right.
Doesn't have anything to do with me. There are certain very esoteric civil matters that we can be involved in, but they're super boring.
I like it. I like that. That's okay. So we won't get into that. All right. So let's, as you explained what you do, some of your personal information. Let's get into this coming election.
Sure.
And go ahead, David.
Before we get into that,
Yeah.
can we take a commercial?
You know what? Yes,
And that'll
we
give you
can.
an opportunity.
Yeah, let's do that. I'll tell you what. Let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back and continue this conversation with Brian Kramer, our state attorney for the 8th Judicial Circuit.
Hey Tornado fans, this is Kurt Miracle of Miracle Automotive and Towing, proud sponsors of Tornado Football. I want to welcome you to beautiful Stark, Florida at David Hurst Stadium, and thank you for letting us be a part of this community. We're here for more than your automotive and towing needs. We're here to be part of Tornado Country. Go Big Red!
3, 2.
Here we are back again on the spot with David Rogers. I'm your host and creator, David Rogers, right along with Mr. Dave Holland, who's producing a show tonight. Our special guest, Brian Kramer. No Byron Bagwell and no Austin Stevens tonight, as they've got other things that they have going on. But glad that we could be back after a week of hiatus due to the storm. Hope you fared well through that. And, of course, all our Florida brethren and sisters, hope they fared as well through the storm. So, been sitting here talking with Brian Kramer, told us a little bit about his personal information, personal life a little bit, just to get to know him. And then, of course, he talked about the 8th Judicial Circuit and what his job and what his title is, and how he goes about performing that particular duty and that particular title. So, do want to ask you a couple of things. Let's start with this upcoming election. Okay. I know that nobody's running against you in the primary, correct?
Correct. I do not have a Republican challenger. I only have a Democratic challenger.
Okay. And so they'll be voting for you or that particular person in the general in November. So you've got all this time to campaign, do the things that you're going to be doing. I'll give you a few minutes to tell our viewers. And now, again, I don't know this other candidate, but I've got you on my show and I've talked with you. Tell them, our viewing audience, why they should vote for Brian Kramer as the state attorney again for the 8th Judicial Circuit.
So, David, the primary issue, I think, in the campaign is the experience between myself and the individual. And so the first question you might ask is, well, why does experience matter? And if you have viewers out there who have dealt with the state attorney's office, I don't need to tell them. They already know. Because when you are dealing with the state attorney's office, if you're a victim, you need someone who understands the system, who understands how things work, who understands what's a realistic expectation, what is not a realistic expectation for the criminal justice system, and who understands how to move cases forward in the best way possible to get the best result for the community. Right. And so where does that come from? Right. Where it comes from is the top down.
Right.
And do I personally prosecute the 18,000 cases here? I don't. Right. But what I do is I set the tone, and I'm a resource in the office for everyone who handles the most serious and the most difficult cases, and I work directly with them to dictate what the result we're going to try to get is, number one, and what is the best and the most efficient way and the most appropriate way to get to that result, right?
Right.
And so why am I better to do that than my opponent? Well, we've already talked about it. I've been prosecuting criminal cases for over 25 years.
Right.
I've been a lawyer for over 30 years. This is not anything that my opponent can tell you. Right. He has never been a prosecutor. He's never been an assistant state attorney. He's a criminal defense lawyer.
Right.
Right. And that experience is not the experience that I believe is the best experience to lead the office. Right. And we face incredibly challenging times right now on matters that if you don't know how the system works, it is not the time to have on-the-job training, right?
Okay,
That's
pretty much it in a nutshell.
That's the issue.
Right.
Everyone, and it's not the state attorney's office, it's every public agency.
Right.
The Department of Corrections is a great example as well. Everybody has to do more with less. Less people, less pay, less experience. And so how do you make sure that happens properly, right? It's from the top down. It's from people who have the time and service to understand how that's going to work. And it's not going to be changing in a way that's good or bad. It's the expectation now that we run public agencies with efficiency. We have to do what we have to accomplish the goals that we can and that we're charged with doing with what the legislature is going to give us to do it.
Right.
Right. And that requires experience. It requires somebody who knows proper decision making, and in the context of this occupation. So my what I'm saying is, we don't want someone who has no experience doing that
Right.
to come in to say, I think I have new ideas and I think I can do things in a different way, when the reality is you just don't have any experience doing it. Maybe you have an idea, but maybe that's an idea that everybody else has already had and realize that doesn't work with the system that we have, right?
All right, I got a question for you there. I
Sure.
just seen it come across the comments, and I'll get to your comments here in just a minute as soon as we move on through the interview. Somebody asked me here, conviction rate. Now, I don't know if that's fair, if that needs to be broke down. I'll let you explain that.
Sure.
Since you've taken office, conviction rate, what is your
Yeah,
and that's probably a broad question,
Well,
right?
the question is, you have to define what your term is.
Right.
Right? Because if you have to tell me what someone means by conviction rate, because you could manipulate that statistic based upon how you define it.
Right.
So the first question is, are you asking of the cases that we have made the decision
I think that-
that we should be able to prove this case?
Right.
What percentage of those cases results in a plea or a guilty trial?
And I think that was the question.
It's in the high 90s. Right?
Really?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. When you start talking about conviction rates that are not in those matters,
Right.
you're now talking about, well, what happens from the time the police or the sheriff
Right.
sends a case to the state attorney, and then does that case ever even get filed? And if it does get filed, is it successful, right?
Right.
And so that's going to be a completely different number, and it's really, you have to understand, that's a number that's not in the control of the state attorney.
Right.
Right, that's a number that's in the control of the law enforcement agency and is going to be affected by the quality of the law enforcement that is done, and it's also going to be affected by other external factors that may be outside the control of the law enforcement agency. What is the populace in the area?
Right.
Right? What is the nature of of the situation? So, I won't use local areas, but if you're
Right.
talking about the ritziest areas of Miami, what is the crime rate there? And when a crime happens there, what is the level of investigation that's applied to those situations?
Right.
Right? If you're talking about someplace that doesn't have a lot of funding for law enforcement, doesn't have a large law enforcement presence, and you have a high rate of crime, then what are the nature of the cases that are being delivered to the state attorney for prosecution?
Right.
We don't have control over what comes through the front door.
Right.
The federal government, they have a much different situation in their prosecution. They very much control what they're willing to allow to come through the front door.
Right.
Right? So they can control their conviction rate by simply saying, we're never taking that case. The state attorney is what we call a prosecution of last resort, meaning we take everything that anyone sends us if they're a law enforcement agency.
Right.
And so when you start talking about conviction rate, the problem is it doesn't tell you a lot about what your state attorney is doing and how well they're doing.
Right. So that would just what you had said there. There's a lot of different factors that go into when you talk about conviction rate. There's a lot of different factors that you got to vary into that, and then all those numbers come together, and then you could probably
Correct.
get
Correct.
a total number. So I know there's, you could sit here for hours and talk to me about different levels and different things, from, like you were saying, from murder to the, to the driver's license,
Sure,
suspended driver's license,
Right.
and we won't get into that and break that down. But do you work closely, and I've seen this, do you work closely with FDLE? Do you have anything as
no.
far as that goes? That was a question that was I didn't know.
FDLE is an agency that submits cases to us.
Yes.
The agencies that we work closely with are the local agencies. So we work extremely closely with the Bradford County Sheriff's Office.
Right.
My people know their people. My people probably have their cell phone numbers in their phones, right?
Right.
They know the sheriff, they know the staff, they know the support staff at those agencies, they know them well. If you were to look at FDLE, what you would find is that we see agents, different agents occasionally.
Right.
It's not going to be the same people all the time.
Right.
Now there will be some who are stationed like in a Gainesville field office that we would see regularly.
Right.
But they might submit to us for prosecution 1 to 2, maybe 3 cases a year,
Okay.
right? So you're talking about Bradford County is submitting, 100 a month, something like that. So it's it's just orders of magnitude different from that.
I know that we were talking during the break, and you spoke a little bit about it. We were talking about some of the laws and some of the things that are going on within our state. I know we were just talking about the gun law.
Right.
You was talking a little bit about the gun law. If you can explain to our viewers about open carry, concealed,
Sure.
what's the difference, and what is it that you're allowed to do?
So, yes, absolutely. So last year, the legislature changed the law to allow concealed carry without licensure.
Right.
Okay. Florida does not have a general open carry law that allows open carry. There are a series of exceptions,
Right.
but they are common sense things that you would think, like if I'm on my way to go hunting, I'm hunting, can I open carry a firearm?
Right.
Yes, of course.
Of course you can.
Right, if you're
Right.
going to the pistol range or the rifle range, can you open carry your firearm there? Of course you can. Are you in your business? Can you open carry a firearm in your business? Yes, on your own personal property. Those type of things. That's different that's a different thing. There are current challenges to Florida's open carry law, the restrictions on open carry based upon the Supreme Court case called Bruin versus the New York Rifle and Pistol Association that changed the way in which we evaluate
Right.
all laws that impact the Second Amendment. So that's sort of the open carry side. On the concealed carry side, there are about 13 different circumstances under which a person cannot carry concealed. Okay, so when you're carrying concealed, you need to understand what those are.
Right.
Right. So obviously, there are things that are obvious. People who are convicted felons.
Right.
Of course, they can't carry them. They can't possess a firearm at all.
Right.
Right. But one of them that people may not understand is people who have been on probation, who are on probation, they can't carry a firearm. People who have been on probation and are still within, I think, I don't have the law right in front of me, within about 3 years.
Right.
Being released from probation, you can't carry a firearm.
Okay.
If you've been Baker acted within a certain period of time, you can't carry a firearm. They're very specific.
Okay.
When we're it's laid out very carefully in that law when those people can't carry concealed. And so, but generally speaking, the general person, right? You don't have these kind of problems in your life. You're just a regular citizen.
Right.
You now can carry a concealed firearm on your person without a permit.
Without a permit.
In the state of Florida.
All right, keeping on that same line, what about as far as in a vehicle? Like, where can that firearm be? Let's say David Rogers is going down 100 and he gets pulled over by the Union County Sheriff's Office. And I have my weapon on me,
Right.
and it's in my glove compartment.
So,
is
right.
that
always has been an exception.
okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
It has always been legal to carry a firearm in your vehicle if you carry it in the proper manner, which
Right.
what you just described is perfectly proper.
Right.
So zippered in a case
Mm-hmm.
is proper. Closed in a closed container, like a center armrest,
Okay.
has been proper.
Okay. Okay.
The thing that is not proper is to open carry a firearm in a vehicle. That's still going to get you in trouble. You've got it on
In
the
my
seat
seat.
right
Okay,
next to
right,
you.
right.
That
Okay.
and a police officer stops you. That's
Right.
a crime occurring in the presence of a police officer for which they could arrest you.
Right.
Right. So you actually have to keep the firearm out of open sight when you're in a vehicle. Now, from a practical standpoint, I always recommend to people that if you're carrying a firearm, whether you're not required to inform law enforcement that, but it is always a best practice that if you encounter a law enforcement officer and you're armed, that you immediately tell the officer, I have a firearm in the vehicle, right? It's in my glove box. They'll generally ask you, where is it? Please tell you not to reach for it, and it'll be fine. They probably aren't going to take it away from you unless there's some reason to do so.
Right.
They're just going to go about their business, right? And that's really what I hope the public understands is that we can get tied up in the law, right? But my experience working with law enforcement for now over 25 years is they're just people, just like you and me.
Right.
They want to go home at night. They want to be safe. And if you make them feel safe in doing their job, they're not going to give you the first second of problem, right? And that's what I hope people realize. They're just like you and me.
So I'm glad that you explained that. As far as we always have that conversation, don't we, David? We have that about open carry and concealed, and who can have a weapon, who can't have a weapon, and we've gotten into this, and we pretty much said what he just said to everybody that's watching the show. And we thought we were right, but I wanted to hear it from you, a guy that knows it, and we were sort of right on the head when we talk about that, aren't we, Dave?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
There's a story I just heard recently. This gentleman had a confrontation with somebody. The gentleman was outside. The guy came outside. The gentleman outside pulled a gun. This guy pulled a gun and shot the guy and killed him, and he's in trouble for murder.
Okay.
I'm confused.
Okay.
Me too.
I'm thinking because he left his dwelling and came out is probably the...
I don't know. David, the thing is that these circumstances are all driven by the very specific facts of that particular case. So we can make some general statements about Florida law that are true in every situation. The first is this. Everyone in the state of Florida has the right to defend themselves when confronted with the threat of death or great bodily harm. That's what the law says, right? We all have the right. No one has to let themselves be injured or killed, right?
Yep.
So when we have these kind of situations, and really I'm not getting enough information about who did what, when, and how to try and make heads or tails out of it.
Right.
But what I can tell you is that, there are factors that we look to try and make these determinations. For instance, who is the primary aggressor in the situation, right? And not initial.
Right.
Right? Initial means something different. Primary is who is the person who is acting the most aggressively. And then why are they acting that way? We would look at that. But we would also look at whose property are we on, right? Because a property owner has the right to exclude others from their property. That's a fundamental tenet of property law, right?
Right.
So that's going to make a difference. And, there's also what we call the Castle Doctrine, which is that in Florida, it's pretty rare now because of the stand your ground law that anyone has what we used to call the duty to retreat, right? I've been doing this long enough that I remember when we didn't have stand your ground, and we argued a lot about the duty to retreat. And now it's pretty rare that somebody has the duty to retreat. But when someone's on their own property, especially if they're within the curtilage, legal terms, the curtilage of the home, they clearly do not have a duty to retreat. They have the right to stand their ground. And so these situations are frequently extraordinarily difficult for us to resolve after the fact, because as we tend to say in this business, there's only one person alive left to tell the story.
Yeah, well, you've made a very good point, and to sum it up, there's a lot of factors, not just a guy shot somebody, all them other little things.
Everything matters.
Everything.
Right, and people, I don't think they understand the difficulty that our law enforcement officers face in trying to parse out these situations, because there is a lot. Again, we go back to the experience issue.
Right.
There's a lot of anger and emotion that is tied up usually on both sides of these situations, and our law enforcement officers are having to go into those situations and try and parse out what happened in these situations with people who are rightfully upset and angry and distraught and mourning And it's incredibly difficult, and it's, and we just have to, really support our law enforcement officers in understanding that they make their best effort, right? They're not in that job to not give their best effort, right?
Wow.
It's not an easy job. And so, that makes it tough to make those calls, but, and like we talked a little bit before the show, one of the
Right.
problems is in my job is that half the time you're making people, you're
Yeah.
disappointing someone,
Right, right.
You're either going to in the situation he describes, you're either going to disappoint the person who is left alive or the family of the person who isn't, right?
Right.
And you got to have the experience to know how to make that call.
And I'm glad that you talked about your experience, and sort of leading into my next question. You were talking about your experience. You've done the job now for 4 years, right?
I've been the state attorney for 4 years.
Right? But
I didn't go through the laundry list of positions that I held.
No, you didn't.
for
But
that.
but you have a lot of experience, like you said, previous to becoming a state attorney, and looking forward to doing it again. My question leading into that is, y'all got so many cases, like you said, each and every day, and in weeks, and in months, and in years, and I know it's hard to, to keep those, and I know you do a good job of managing these cases, and your team does as well. And he's shaking his head. My question is, I know there's people out there that have done some things they shouldn't have done, broke the law, let's call it as it is, that are very good people.
Sure, absolutely.
And I know you see it each and every day. And I know that how deep, in other words, how deep do y'all go into looking at the person? Of course, that's the victim. Of course, that's who you're working for. But also the person that's being prosecuted. How do you determine what he or she should get as far as what law is broken?
Sure.
To
But David, let's start with one fundamental principle, which
Right.
is that my job is to prosecute people.
Right,
So
right,
we have defense attorneys.
Right.
And that is fundamentally, people get this idea from the media that every defense attorney is out there and they're trying to get people off, right?
See,
and
and
that
that's-
really isn't what they spend the majority of their time doing.
Right.
What they spend the majority of their time doing, there are cases like that, of course.
Yeah.
Right? But the majority of the time is they're doing exactly what you're talking about, which is they're representing their client for the purpose not of saying, my guy didn't do it, but
Right.
of either saying one of two things or a combination of both. What you charged him with isn't accurate. And
Okay.
you need
Yeah.
and you need to change it.
Right.
Okay? And here's facts that would tell you why you've made an inaccurate charge.
Right.
Okay? Or that they're basically telling you my person isn't as bad as you portray them to be. We have an adversarial system,
right,
right? We divide our job as prosecutors into two phases: the Minister of Justice phase and
Right.
and the prosecutorial phase.
Okay.
The Minister of Justice phase is what we talked about before. When a case comes in and it's coming in from law enforcement, we have to make an initial decision of, are we going to file this case? Are we going to prosecute this case? We have to remember, and we do, and I remind my people, we have the same duty to prosecute as we have to not prosecute.
See, and now, okay, that was where I was going
so,
with
so you don't get into the advocate side, you don't get into the let's make a criminal charge side until you've made the decision
that. Right,
that you're going to prosecute. Now,
Right.
once you've made the decision to prosecute, and once there's probable cause to support it, that it's reasonably likely that we're going to win the case,
Right.
and the cause is just. Those are the three elements of prosecution.
Right.
Okay? Once you've met those three elements, now we're an advocate, right? We're representing the state of Florida. We're representing the people of Bradford County.
Right.
And we're in there to say, this person committed a crime, they need to be punished. Right? That's what
Right.
we do. Now, where does that come in? So your question is two-part. Number one, how do you decide what you're going to recommend? We don't sentence people.
Right, that's right.
We don't sentence anybody.
Right.
We make a recommendation or a plea offer to the court. We have varying levels of control over how that comes out.
Right.
But we do have some levels of control. How do you make that plea offer? That's one question.
Right.
And then what do you do with the information that you receive that is exactly what you're talking about, the principle that a good person can make a bad choice,
Correct.
right?
Right.
How do you deal with that information? So let's
Right.
take it in those two parts. Okay, the first thing is, number one, how do you make that plea offer?
Right.
Right? Well, the first question is, the first issue is, nothing occurs in a vacuum.
No.
Right?
No.
We see the same cases over and over and over again, right?
Right.
So if you understand what is this person charged with, what does their prior record look like, what is the damage to the victim, those things, that very sort of bare sort of elements of what you're looking at,
Right.
you can then say, well, what did we do in the 50 cases that came before, right? What are we likely to have done in this before?
Right.
Right? And that's a good starting place. It's not necessarily going to tell you have to do that in this case too, but it's a good place to start, is to say, where did we go before? And then let's look very specifically at the facts of this case.
Right.
And let's look very specifically at this defendant's prior criminal record. And
Right.
let's look very specifically about what does the victim want?
Okay.
Okay?
Right. Right.
Because if there is a victim, Florida law and the Florida Constitution says that what the victim wants has to be given great weight by the prosecutor, right? They have a right to be informed at every material stage of the process,
Right.
to have meaningful communication and input with the prosecutor, and to have that input listened to, right? So you factor those three things in, and you can get, what have we done before? What does this defendant do in this case? What is the prior record? And
Right.
what does this victim want?
Right.
And then you have to, there is an element of, you just have to make a plea offer.
Right.
Right? You got to make, if you say, well, I'm going to offer you 3 years, would 3.5 have been okay? Probably. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's an
I
element
get-
of, should it be 3.5? Should it be 4? Should it be 5?
Right.
You do have to use your judgment, your experience, in trying to discern, well, what should we do there? Right? But that's why when you come out of law school, we're giving you no valid driver's license, driving while your license is suspended, petty theft.
Right.
Right? You're not going to see sexual battery and murder until you're 10 years to 15 years in as a prosecutor.
Okay.
Right? That's why I talk about experience so much.
Right.
Right? If
Right.
we left that decision making to the folks who are just coming out of law school, would we get a good result?
No.
Right?
No.
So,
the experience means everything.
right. And would it be their fault?
No,
They'd
no.
be trying the best they can.
Yeah.
But this is job is about lived experience.
Right. And I'm glad that you answered that question in that way. And I know, I'm sure you could sit here and quote me the book of law for the state of Florida over and over again. And hey, what'd you say? We probably put people to sleep. Excuse me.
Exactly.
Doing that, and we won't go into that. But before we start our close, is there any laws? And I know we talked about the gun law. Is there any laws in particular that maybe me and Dave and our audience doesn't know about, something that's coming down the pike that may affect us as citizens and individuals?
There's a new law that's taking effect January 1st, and I don't know that it's not something that I think the average citizen cares about, but
Right.
it's something that's very important to law enforcement.
Right.
And it's what we're going to be calling the 25-foot rule.
Okay.
So the Florida legislature, because of things that have been happening around the state, has implemented a law that says if a police officer is in the purpose of sheriff's office, doesn't matter.
Right.
And even an EMT,
Right.
a firefighter.
Okay.
If they're in the execution of their duties,
Right.
you cannot come within 25 feet of them.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
And now the law requires that they warn somebody first.
How about that, Dave?
Okay. They're going to give you a warning.
Right.
And say you've got to step back, you've got to stay back at least 25 feet. And my recommendation to them is don't arrest anybody unless you're sure it's 30.
Right. Sure.
But there's a
Because everybody's
reason-
got one of these, right? And
Well, and that in the heat of a moment when people are upset,
Yeah.
is it easy to figure out what's the
Yes.
difference between 22 and 25? No.
Right.
But 25 and 30 probably so. there's a reason for it, which is that we, as living in rural areas
Right.
and the citizens of Bradford County, most of the time our officers are alone,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And so it is extremely dangerous for our police officers and our sheriff's deputies when they have to work a call by themselves and have an uncontrolled set of people around them
Right.
who they can't keep an eye on, and they're dealing a lot with the most emotional situations that,
Yes.
that people are going to be facing in their life, and it's just dangerous, right?
Right.
And so they've passed this law, and I think it's one that's very important to law enforcement and to having a safe and effective ability for especially our rural law enforcement officers to do their job safely. So I think it's a good law, and I think I think the legislature did a good job with it. So that's one that's coming up. It starts January 1st.
Can I ask you a question about that particular
Of
law?
course.
And I think you sort of answered this already. So 25-foot law, you're at a scene, officer says, could you please
Stay back 25
stay
feet.
back 25 feet? Okay, the person doesn't acknowledge, okay?
There's no
Is there a-
requirement that they acknowledge.
Right, there's no requirement they acknowledge. As a matter of fact, they ain't moved anywhere.
Okay.
So, next, what can that officer do?
Well-
In that particular case, if it's not acknowledged, then they don't do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, what they can do is place somebody under arrest and take
Okay,
them to
that's
jail.
okay, right?
That's-
Okay,
that's
it
what
is
they can do.
it can be an arrest.
Absolutely. And,
Okay.
And of course, the problem is it's designed for when a law enforcement officer is working by themselves.
Right.
So is it likely that officer is going to stop right then and there and start putting handcuffs on that person? No.
No.
But when the other officers show up, they're going to start pointing people out and
Yeah.
say that person, and that person,
yeah.
and that person, and then people are going to start going to jail. That's or if there's a bunch of police officers already on
Right.
scene, and people are not doing it, people are probably going to start going to jail.
Right.
That's what's going to happen.
Okay, so it's definitely an arrestable
That's
offense.
the whole point, is that when someone is causing this kind of problem,
Right.
that they did not have a tool, an effective tool, to stop the problem,
Right.
right?
Okay. Another question, we've talked about this on the show, and I definitely want you to go back and watch this show. This has been a great show so far. One of the things that we always talk about, I know Mitchell Gunner is very proponent of this, is ATVs, four-wheel vehicles, side-by-sides, riding on interstates, county roads,
Okay.
things like that. I know that they're trying to get laws into place. I don't know how much you deal with that, because we've heard of some people getting killed, some people getting hit on these particular things. I don't know how much you deal with that, and if you know if there's any law that or anything that has been talked about that as far as that goes.
So the issue there for us is that, generally speaking, in the most common of circumstances, it's a
Right.
civil traffic infraction.
Okay.
And we do not handle civil traffic infractions.
Right.
We handle criminal traffic infractions.
Okay, what if there's a hit? What if there is?
Yeah,
that's-
so here's the thing. When there's an accident, okay,
Right.
like if you're using the term accident,
Right.
it's probably not a crime,
Right.
right?
Okay.
When it becomes a crime, you're using the words negligence.
Negligence,
culpable
okay,
something
yes.
we call culpable negligence,
Negligence,
right?
right.
And culpable negligence is more than mere negligence.
Right.
It's negligence that rises to the level of an intentional deprivation of another person's rights.
Okay.
Gross and flagrant
Right.
negligence. Gross and flagrant disregard of another person's rights. And a normal traffic accident
Right.
that happens for understandable reasons is never going to be that. Now,
Okay.
if you have other very specific circumstances, like you have someone who is driving recklessly.
Okay. There you go.
And someone dies as a result of someone driving recklessly, that's a crime.
Yep.
It's vehicular homicide.
Side. Right.
But that's not an accident. That's
No.
Reckless driving is willful and wanton.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Right.
And willful means intentional.
Right.
That's what willful means. So when you start talking about is someone reckless driving, you're saying they're doing it on purpose.
Right.
Right? And if they're not doing it on purpose, it's not reckless.
DUI fall under that?
Oh, gosh, yes. DUI,
For sure.
DUI has its own,
Own
its
entity.
own entity. If you are DUI and someone dies,
Mm-hmm.
that's an extraordinarily serious crime.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So there. Okay. I just wanted to make
There are
sure.
minimum mandatory penalties associated with that. It's a minimum mandatory 4 years in state prison, and it goes up to 15 years for one person.
So okay. So there. Say that again. There's a minimum of what?
Minimum mandatory, meaning
Minimum
you're
mandatory,
going
right.
to go to prison and you're going to serve day for day, 48
for-
months,
right.
4 years, and the judge could sentence you to up to 15 years.
Wow. Depending on
And
history,
on your,
background.
and on your first offense with a DUI, we have something that's called a criminal punishment guideline score sheet,
Right.
which I won't bother.
Okay. I got
We
you.
don't want to spend a lot of time understanding because it's very boring. But that guideline score sheet will set a minimum sentence, and that minimum sentence for DUI manslaughter is around 8 years.
Okay. Definitely don't want to drink and drive, guys. We've preached that on this show many a times. We are not an advocate of that whatsoever. So, and like you said, I figured that fell into its own entity.
Right.
You
Which
know.
is one of the greatest things about Uber.
Right.
Is it has brought down the instances of
gonna say
DUI
that.
and brought down the instances of DUI homicide. The Uber, Lyft. I don't think we have much of that out here.
No, not out here. No.
But it certainly has helped. And
Yeah.
we're thankful for it.
All right. Any other laws before we close down, and then I'm gonna give you a little time to look into that camera and tell the audience again why they should vote for you, Mr. Brian Kramer, in the November election. Any other laws that you can think of? I'm definitely like this. I'm gonna use this next week, the 25-foot law.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you see maybe that's come out in the last several months, or maybe that may be coming? I know you were talking about the 25-foot
That
law.
one's in January.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the changes we've had recently have been more like tweaks to
2 weeks to certain.
certain laws that
Right.
that were already on the books, but we've been adjusting the penalties. That's been a lot of what legislature does. Legislature doesn't do a lot of radical stuff in election years.
Right.
Right.
Okay, yep.
It tends to be a quiet year, especially a presidential election year for the legislature, and they haven't really changed things big. Last year was more the big year.
Right.
Last year we got constitutional carry.
Right.
Last year we got the death penalty for sexual battery for children.
Okay.
So that's new. That's a challenge to existing Supreme Court precedent, and it's not retroactive, so it's only for cases happening after October 1, 2023 and forward.
Okay.
So we haven't seen. Thank you to the sweet Lord that we have not seen a lot of those cases. These are the worst, other than murder, and sometimes I would say some of these are worse than murder. We have not seen. We don't see a lot of sexual battery on children under the age of 12. But these are some of the hardest cases that we have to deal with, and one of the reasons why it's hard to find prosecutors of more than 15 years because it's hard to deal with those cases.
And I know laws and like you said, the tweaking of laws and the laws that are already in place. I know some of them are very, very stringent, and you know, you're going to do your job to, let's call it what it is, prosecute to the fullest extent, depending on what the nature of the crime was. Have you seen, since you've been the state attorney for the 8th Judicial Circuit, have you seen crime gone down in any phases as far as that goes? I don't know if you're the right person to ask that.
You know, I would say this. Okay, so if you looked at the 8th Judicial Circuit, the counties that I talked about, Alachua,
Right.
Union, Baker, Bradford, Levy, and Gilchrist,
Right.
what you would find for the most part is this. If you're looking at the 5 what we call regional counties,
Right.
There's 4 that touch Alachua and Baker.
And Bacon.
They are very safe. They have been very safe.
Mm-hmm.
We have excellent law enforcement. We have excellent law enforcement in Bradford County. We have excellent law enforcement in those counties, and they are safe communities.
Right.
They have been safe communities, and that really hasn't changed. Do you see occasionally, a little spike here of this or a dip there of that?
Right.
Yeah, we hadn't had a murder in Levy County in many, probably several years, and then
Wow.
we had 3 in 9 months.
9 months.
Okay,
Right.
that's just an anomaly, right?
Right.
Gilchrist County, we haven't had a murder since the shooting of the law enforcement officers that
Right.
were out there several years ago. these are really safe communities. And even if you look at Alachua County that's not Gainesville.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Let's. Okay. Yeah, I got
If you
you.
look at Alachua County
Right.
that's not Gainesville, you've got a pretty darn safe community. There is a portion of Gainesville that has a significant gun problem. And there, we, as the state attorney's office, are working with all of our partners in law enforcement and in the community
Right.
to try to address that problem. But it's an incredibly difficult problem. I mean, it is vexing, because it is driven by very young offenders. And very young offenders don't make good
Decisions,
choices,
yeah.
right? Don't
Yeah.
make good
No,
judgments.
they don't.
Make good decisions, and they're very volatile, right? And so it is really tough to get a handle on that problem. But that's a pocket. I try to make sure people understand. I represent 4,300 square miles, and I've got about 10
Right.
that have a problem.
See, that's you take that, do that in a fraction. I mean, that's
Right. Right.
that's a small fraction.
That's 25%.
It's not 25%.
No, it's not. No, it's not 25%.
It's less than one.
one. It's less than one. It's like 0.05 or 0.04 or something like that. It's just a real minuscule
It's
number.
a very small area.
40,000.
Well, if you're looking at 4,300 square miles and you got
4,300 square
you got
miles.
10 square miles that are
Just
a
10
problem.
of it.
Oh, okay. 10
0.04.
square miles.
Out of that 4,300.
Yeah,
What is
yeah.
it? 0.01? I mean, yeah, we could do
It's
the
a
math
small-
all day
It's
long.
a small area that
Yeah.
has this problem. It is undeniably a problem. It's a
Right.
problem that,
I'm not going to ask the
Right.
question.
but it's undeniably a problem. I can't deny it's a problem. I would never would. Everybody knows that it is. If you live in Gainesville, you live in these areas, you know it's a problem.
Yeah.
But that, that's why you can't even judge the entire Gainesville Police Department based on this. They're doing everything that they can.
Right.
And they cover a much broader area than the small area where there is a significant problem. And they do a fantastic job. Like, they're a
Right.
wonderful law enforcement agency. It is beyond their control. They don't have the ability to control this. It's not a problem that you can arrest your way out of.
Right.
Right? It's just not, and it's going to take a lot to solve it.
So,
We've stumped him.
I just stumped him. I think you
I'm
did.
not sure if it's ethical to even ask this question,
Right.
but what's the percentage of crimes that involve drugs?
Well, it's not unethical to ask that question. I think it's a very legitimate question, but you have to define terms. Because let me give you an example of why you have to define terms. Somebody burglarizes a house. Is it a
Right.
drug crime? So it could be if they are stealing drugs.
Right.
It's a drug crime.
Right.
If they're motivated to commit the crime by drugs, is it a drug crime? Because if you were only to look at crimes that actually involve a controlled substance, it would be smaller. The answer would be smaller than the
Right.
actual problem itself,
Right.
right? Because most crime is driven by a few factors, right? Domestic violence,
Right.
sex crimes,
Crimes.
and economic factors. Right? Those are your main things. And economic factors is really just another way of saying drugs. Because if you have all the money in the world to buy all the drugs in the world that you would like to buy, are you going to commit crime? Well, you're going to commit possession crimes.
Crime,
You
right.
can commit trafficking crimes.
Crimes.
But are you going to commit burglary, grand theft, robbery? Probably not.
Yes.
So I would call them an economic crime.
Right.
Right, in that regard. And so your question is, well, how much of all crime is driven by both economic factors and the possession and trafficking of illegal narcotics?
Correct.
It's a significant number. Okay? It's not an insignificant number. And one of the places where it's even more significant is in violent crime. Because the violent crime is really can be divided into domestic violence, sexual violence, which both are fairly small percentages,
Right.
and then violence that's driven by economic factors, which would include drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of your home invasion robberies, which are some of the most serious crimes that we deal with,
Right.
are driven by drugs someone's stealing drugs, or they're stealing the money from as a result of drug sales,
Get drugs.
or they're trying to steal money or property for the purposes of obtaining drugs, right? So yes, it's a big driving factor in that class of crime, right? But that just numerically, your domestic violence crimes and your sexual violence crimes are just numerically smaller.
So on a big scale or area that you, as the state attorney and this
In this
overall group of counties, it's hard to say that 10% of
Right.
everything is crime related or
Drug
drug related.
related.
Right, because number one, we don't get the opportunity to ask people, why did you do it? And if you do ask them, why did you do it, they're not accurate and reliable
I love that,
stories
yeah.
of why they did what they did. A lot of people are not going to be honest with you about why they did something wrong.
Yeah.
That's the nature of criminal justice, right? That's the nature of criminology. So how do you make this evaluation? You make the evaluation through your lived experience of being in a
Right.
courtroom and speaking with people and interacting with people, defense attorneys, judges, and defendants, and law enforcement officers, and understanding what is driving crime in a community. And the answer is yes. When it comes to property crimes and violent crime that isn't related to either domestic violence or sexual violence, it is being driven a lot by drugs, a lot, right? Think about it in your own personal experience.
Right.
How many, sure, bar fights, right? You've had bar fights.
Oh,
We've
yeah,
had
of
bar
course,
fights.
of
They
course.
happen,
Yeah, yeah.
right? But how many serious bar fights are there in Bradford County in a year that result in somebody going to prison?
It's hard to
It's
say.
hard. Very minuscule.
Right, it's pretty
Very
few,
minuscule.
right?
Yeah.
How many burglaries are there that are breaking into a car, breaking into a house,
Right.
stealing a mower out
Right.
underneath somebody's porch,
Right.
taking somebody's four-wheeler? How many of that is driven by drugs?
That's almost daily.
Right. So if you look at that and you just, you're not, we're not doing hard statistics here. We're looking at practical lived experience.
Yeah.
You know that is what's driving crime, right? So
Byron, I was just getting ready to get to that, and I'm glad that you asked that because I've got a two-part question. The last two questions for me, and then we'll start wrapping up the show. And I'm gonna give Brian one more shot and look right into that camera and say why you should vote for me. The first question is, you're talking about drug trafficking and different things with drugs. I want to go to another element of this, which is a world problem, really, but definitely national problem. I know it's happening in our state as well, but I want to know within the 8th Judicial Circuit, how bad is human trafficking going on within this?
yeah, that's a good question. It is hard to say because we don't really have good methodologies of detecting human trafficking.
Right.
So we know sort of the places where it occurs, but they're very difficult to penetrate in the sense of how do you penetrate, like if it's happening within a community of people who don't speak English. Okay, right. So they're native, and even worse, so maybe their native language is a language that we can't readily get interpreters for. And you don't
Right.
have native speakers who are law enforcement officers. How do you penetrate into those environments? Well, you don't. You become reactive, right?
Right.
You only react to circumstances that develop in law enforcement.
Right.
Right. Proactive law enforcement becomes impossible. So when you when you're not detecting crime well,
Right.
It's hard to judge how pervasive is it.
Right.
Right. And people, might have this idea that human trafficking is like, is the stoplight red or is the stoplight green? Right? That is not how this works.
No.
Right? It is on a scale of coercion. It's on
Correct.
a scale of, there are some things that obviously, right. are obviously human trafficking. You are keeping someone enslaved by drugs and
Sure.
violence and forcing them to perform sex acts for money.
Right.
You are committing human trafficking 100% every day. You've loaned someone money to come to the United States for the purposes of getting a green card, and you're requiring them to work that money off in your restaurant, in your dry cleaner, in your nail salon. Is that human trafficking? How much coercion are you applying to the person? Do they have choices? Do they have free choice? Can they?
I
break
would
this
say it
contract?
is.
Okay, but in the United States, when you break a contract, you go to court. You go to civil court.
Right.
Right.
Gotcha. Yep.
If the answer isn't civil court,
I see what you're saying.
okay,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
is it
Yeah.
human trafficking?
I gotcha. I
See what I'm
gotcha. I see what you're saying.
That's gray.
Right.
Right.
I gotcha.
That gets very
Gray.
gray. So when you ask the question, how much is going on? My answer has to be, I don't know.
Right.
When we see it, we will prosecute it.
And my next part of that question
We
is
train on it every year. We're required by statute to train on it every year, and to have people come in and speak, to have people come in and report on what's happening in the community, and we do that every year, so that our people are up to speed when we see it. But again, remember, it's law enforcement who have the guns and the badges and the cars.
Correct.
They're the ones out there
they're the ones out there. Yeah.
who have to detect it.
Right. So when it comes to you
Right.
and your team,
Right.
which what I'm hearing and everything that I've heard is doing a fantastic job, by the way. Make sure you get out and go vote, and I'm going to let Mr. Kramer have his last shot here in a minute. So if somebody is guilty of human trafficking, you were saying about certain levels of that, depending on how many times? So
With human trafficking, it's very serious.
Right.
There are no not serious versions of human trafficking.
Right.
So you're going to score. We talked about
Yeah, the score sheet,
You're
yep.
going to score prison on your first offense.
And that's what I was. And that's what I was looking. That's we're putting these people away.
I agree with that.
Correct. Right. The legislature said. So remember, and this is we want to talk about Republican and Democrat things. This is a Republican
Right.
thing.
Right.
I'm here to enforce the law as the legislature defines it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to decide what the law in the state of Florida should be.
Right.
The legislature sets the law. I enforce the law.
Right.
If you choose to do something different, then Governor DeSantis is going to have something to say about it.
Right.
He has done that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so I agree with you. I agree with you in principle that when someone's engaged in this kind of very serious sexual trafficking and things like that,
Yeah.
that person should go to prison. Absolutely, right? We can
Yeah.
all agree to that. But what I would also tell you is this: the legislature says that, right? That's what the Florida legislature says. So that's what we do, right? Is we work to do that. Now, when you have a very difficult gray case, don't get me wrong. There are times when we have to make deals. This is a dirty business at times, right? We
Right.
have to cut deals.
Absolutely.
Right.
It is.
And,
Yeah.
and that's just the way it is. And the system is set up that way. It's not the prosecutors who want that.
Right.
It's the way the system is set up.
Yeah.
You want to, you know how many cases we try in a year? Of those 18,000? About 100. Okay?
Huh?
And now, you double that number, and you need double the judges, double the public defenders, double the state attorneys, double
Yeah.
the clerks, double the courtrooms, right?
And
Do
what
you
is
want
all? What
double-
is
do you
all
want
that
double
up to?
your
Money,
property,
right?
Do you want double your property taxes?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Where's that? That's money.
Right? It's all
Yes.
comes down to money. So,
Yeah.
so the system is designed to resolve cases by plea, and
Yeah.
a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people that I talk to, especially in our conservative community, they feel like people should be getting very harsh sentences on every single case, and I understand it, and I
Well.
don't disagree with them, and they are right to have that opinion. They're allowed to, like you say, this is America.
This is America,
You get
right.
to have that opinion.
Right.
But the reality is we work in a system and we don't control it, right? It
Right.
is controlled by the laws that are set up in the state of Florida, and we have to do it. So are there times when we're gonna negotiate cases, even the most serious of cases?
Right.
Yeah, we do. We have to. But when you have very clear cases of people who are engaging this kind of behavior that we're talking about here, sex trafficking,
Right.
keeping people
But-
dependent upon drugs or keeping them in prison for that purpose, those cases are clear and obvious, and we do what's appropriate. For sure.
And I wish my co-host was here, Byron. Go ahead. Yeah, I've got one. You got another question, or do you want to back
If
up
you
on that a
don't
little
mind,
bit?
it's
No.
just-
Go ahead.
It's just something that affects everybody. And I'm sure the state attorney's office probably gets calls on it all the time. And it's scamming.
Yeah, we do. I get them all the time.
What's the recourse on that?
Yeah, the best recourse is to never get scammed.
Yes.
Because
I
here's
agree.
the thing.
I agree.
If you look at the scams that we deal with, that are the ones we get the most calls about, The people who are committing the crime are not in the United States.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
So if the person's not in the United States,
How
we
you
have
gonna catch 'em?
extremely limited ability to exact a recourse against that person. And when we can, it's generally because the federal government has detected a large-scale scam, and they are taking actions that are far beyond the purview of your local state attorney, right? They're heartbreaking, first of all, because
Yes.
I get calls from people who know me personally, and it's my mom.
Yep. And I was just getting ready to say, my
It's
grandmother.
My mom. It's my grandmother.
Yep.
And I
The
heard one
elderly.
recently. This one broke my heart. These people, these nefarious people, show up at an elderly person's house and they say, "It looks like you need a new roof." Okay. And they say, "We'll just take a look until we can write you an estimate." And they hand them what they say is allows them to go on the roof, a waiver of liability. It's a contract. And in the contract, they don't need a new roof. But the contract says if you break the contract, it's 30% of the price.
Yep.
And then you have some poor elderly person, by the time their family finds out about it,
It's too late.
right? By the time their family finds out about it, they've already paid the
They
contract.
already paid the contract.
Right? And now it's terrible. These are people we can go after.
Good.
Right? These are the people who are walking around neighborhoods, who are in the community.
Yeah,
this sort of
they're-
thing. We go after them hard, and we try. And one of the things when I took office, is I made a priority to increase awareness of elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation.
I'm glad you said that.
To then increase our prosecutors' knowledge of how to prosecute those cases, how to make a case when it looks like it's going to be really hard to do so, and to work with our law enforcement partners so that they recognize this isn't a civil matter, right? This
Right.
is abuse or exploitation
Right.
or neglect of an elderly person, so that they recognize that, and they're well trained. And the Florida legislature has given us great tools to address these things, both from a practical and legal standpoint, where you used to have to go through the whole process to try and get to a point of restitution, right?
Right.
Get the money back. Now, the legislature has put things in place where judges can immediately freeze and claw back money through court orders that were non-existent years ago.
Right.
And so we've tried to, we're trying to tell people, hey, there are tools in our toolbox now that weren't there 5 years ago. You guys need to go and do that. And I think we've been successful, but there is a huge problem that elderly people are embarrassed when this happens to them.
Of course, yeah.
And they should never be embarrassed. You are a victim of a crime.
Right.
If you would not be embarrassed if someone beat you or raped you or murdered your loved one, to come
Right.
to your law enforcement officer or to come to us. When someone takes advantage of you, it is no different in the eyes of law enforcement,
enforcement,
state
right.
attorney's office, and your friends and your neighbors. Right? We have, and so one of the things I've worked towards is we got to remove the stigma of I got scammed. Right?
I like
And
that.
that's one of the things that I've worked towards. And so one of the things I do is I go to, like, Gainesville has what we call elder options. It's a place for the elderly to go and
Right.
speak there, and we talk about it, right? And we talk about
Education
Yeah.
would definitely be a big part of helping yourself from
Right.
getting scammed.
right.
IRS does not call you
No.
and threaten you.
Yep.
No.
Yeah.
The electric company does not text you and tell you
No.
that they're gonna shut your power off if you
Right.
don't pay.
UPS
Right.
doesn't text you to tell you to change your package.
Right.
Delivery,
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Those kind. Yes.
But I was telling my mom, who is 83, about this scam, because I worry about my parents.
Sure.
Being 86, right? And and my mom, who's very with it, she said, here's the thing: if I didn't call somebody to do something, I don't want anything to do with them.
Right.
And that's it.
Okay.
You can avoid so much by simply saying, if I didn't initiate whatever it is that we're trying to do here, then you're probably going to be all right.
Right.
Now,
Yep.
obviously, you could call the wrong person.
Sure, you could. Sure.
But when somebody shows up, emails you, texts you, shows up at your house, should be red flags, warning
All
lights,
over the place.
sirens
Yeah.
going on. know.
A good friend of mine got a phone call. They said that he got a warrant out for him in Texas.
I've gotten that one.
And that the car that he rented was involved in a drug deal, and that they want him in Texas to settle this out. And I intervened at the right moment to stop him.
Right,
He was getting in his car to go get some money
right.
to mail it.
To mail it, yeah.
Thank God.
And I asked him.
Well,
I
when
go,
it was a drop-off point, right? Didn't he want? They
Yes,
wanted,
he did.
They wanted to drop. Yeah, I remember this. What you were telling
and
me.
I think the drop-off point was an area where a guy's going to show up and just
And
rob him.
him. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
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 But I asked him, have you ever been in Texas? And he's like, no.
Red flag.
So that right there told
Right.
me.
But when you get older, people, they don't go through that analysis process before they start the decision-making process.
His feeling was, I got a warrant out for me, I'm going to get arrested and go to jail.
That's
That
what he's
was
thinking.
in his head.
If someone,
fear
You know,
tactic.
one of the things I would make sure people understand on the warrant thing, if someone says you have a warrant, call the sheriff's office.
And we said,
Yeah.
Call Gordon Smith and ask him, do I have a warrant? Because if most citizens, if they had a warrant, they'll march themselves right down to the sheriff's office.
Sure
and
they
put
would.
themselves in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
And they'll tell you.
Now, if they tell you don't go to the sheriff's office, don't tell anybody.
Right.
The
That's not-
investigation is
Yeah,
ongoing.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, one last question for me. I know we're getting about the 8:45 hour. One last question for me, and it's from Byron. And I know this is going to be sort of broad, so I'll let you answer it how you feel best. I know every state has this particular problem. I know the state of Florida definitely does. The state of Texas definitely does. I think you know where I'm going with this. State of California is has this more than most other states, and that's illegal aliens and crimes. I know the state, again, I know you can answer for the state of Florida because y'all always talk, but in our 8th Judicial circuit here, illegal aliens and crimes, are you seeing an uprise of that? Is there a lot of that going on? I know that most of these communities are rural. Some of these aliens, they do work on farms, they do work in different aspects, and they're hard to keep track of, for sure.
Well, but first of all, yes, they may work on farms, but our agricultural partners, the people who run these farms,
Right.
they are, for the most part, very good
at-
citizens, right?
Right, yes, absolutely.
And the federal government has a program that requires the people who are working in agriculture
Right.
to be authorized to do that. And I would tell you that I think our agricultural partners out there do an excellent job. Everybody can be scammed. Everybody can come up with
Exactly, I
fake
was just saying,
paperwork. I
yeah.
understand
Now,
that.
that's what I was sort of going with
But
that.
here's the thing. In our community, what the vast majority of the folks that you're referring to are transient.
Exactly.
Right? So we may have a watermelon harvest out in Levy-Gilchrist, that's a big watermelon production
Right.
area. And you may have folks coming in to do that watermelon harvest, but they're, generally speaking, they're on teams, it's all fairly well controlled and regulated, and then they move on, right?
Right.
When the harvest is done.
Right.
So we don't have that standing population.
Right.
A large standing immigrant population in the 8th Judicial Circuit.
Right.
Like, if you lived in New York City, where my daughter goes to school, it's called the Little Dominican Republic. You have a
Of course.
large
Yeah.
standing population of immigrants.
Right.
So you're going to have a lot more of that there
Right.
than when you only have a transitory population. We always have a certain level of folks who are from other countries who are maybe passing through, who commit acts.
Acts,
A lot of them
sure.
are traffic.
Right.
To be honest with
Right. Okay. There we go. Go
you.
back.
Don't have valid driver's licenses, don't have proper insurance.
Right.
Not good.
Right.
But we here don't have a standing population of immigrants to have this problem
Right.
that you're talking about.
Okay.
And so I would really say that in our population here, the folks from those populations commit crime at no greater rate than any other portion of the
Than
population.
any other portion. Okay. Gotcha. Okay, now that's sort of, Byron, I hope that answers your question there. Again, welcome to On the Spot with David Rogers, who's now tuning in. We have Mr. Brian Kramer here. He's the state attorney for the 8th Judicial Circuit. He's looking to seek re-election. He does have an opponent that you can vote for, or him or that other opponent in the general election. Coming up here in November, man, and before you know it, we're talking about football season being here. That vote's going to be here. That general election's going to be here, and it's going to be here quickly. So I'd like for you to come back at some point, maybe in the next month or couple of months, man. This has been great, and I know Byron hopefully will be here for that one as well. But I'm going to give you one last plug here. Why we need to have Brian Kramer as our state attorney for the 8th Judicial Circuit for a second term.
Okay, so first of all, I want to say thank you for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for coming, man.
It's really been enjoyable, and I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
This is a unique format for me. This is the first time I've done it, so I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.
I'm happy to come back anytime, especially if I can provide some kind of insight that your folks would be interested in. But to answer your question, I would say this. I've been here since I was basically born. And I did all my education here. I left to go to law school. But even in law school, I came back in my first summer after law school. I came back here and I started working here in 1991 at the public defender's office as an intern. And then when my wife became pregnant with our first child in 1999, we made the decision that what was important to us was family and community. And we moved from where we were in Southwest Florida to here to raise our family and to be members of this community.
Right.
And so I've raised my 2 children here. And I have been working as a servant of this community, a public servant with a servant's heart in this community, prosecuting criminals and keeping this community safe for 25 years. Okay? Mm-hmm. And I know how to do this job. I'm never going to make everybody happy. I recognize that.
No.
But I have the experience to do this job. I have the experience to shepherd this office forward into the future and continue to provide years more of effective, quality prosecution that will keep this community safe, and it will keep this community, Bradford County, Baker County, Levy County, Gilchrist County, it's going to keep them looking like Bradford County, right?
Right.
Bradford County doesn't want to be Gainesville.
No. Not at all.
And they don't want to be San Francisco.
Definitely not.
Okay?
Right.
So when you're thinking about, well, who am I going to choose as a prosecutor?
Right.
Right? You better ask yourself the question, what do you want your community to look like?
Right. No, I fully agree with you.
What you want your community to look like is yes, it's going to grow. Yes, we hope it's going to be better tomorrow than it is today.
Right.
But what do you want it to look like as far as being a safe place to live, as far as it being a place where you have an expectation that if something horrible happens, that the people in government are going to be there not to cause you more grief, but to help you get through what could be the worst time of your life. Who do you want when someone has to answer that call? Do you want someone who has been doing this for a long time, knows how to do it, and who has invested their life in their family in this community? Or do you want something else?
And you're exactly right. When we first started this show, we sort of compared that, when we were talking to the general election for presidency that's coming up. You see what's going on in this country today, and again, I'm not going to get politically involved tonight. You see what's going on in this country. If you like what's going on in this country, then you vote that way. If you don't, then you vote the other way. And I think what you were saying hits right on the head there. And that's, I'm going to just throw one word out there, and you can tell me, Dave and Brian, if you agree, and that's experience. Mm-hmm. Experience goes a long way with whatever you do. If I'm a purchasing agent, and I have experience, and I go to work for a big company. Now I know there's extenuating circumstances. Are you going to take a young person that don't really know what's going on, You know what I'm saying? And you have to train them. Now, some companies will do that. You know what I'm saying? It's happening right now. And I'm just trying to throw an example out there. You know, you're probably going to have the experienced guy because he can come in there and do the job right away instead of putting a lot of money into this young man or young woman and training them up. Again, that's not every company, but generally speaking, experience becomes a big-time factor in a performance of a
you
job.
have a track record, right?
Right.
People, you can look back on what you've done, and you know, what we say in this business is the best indicator of future performance is past performance.
It's past performance.
The best
Yeah.
indicator of future behavior
Yep.
is past behavior.
Right.
Right? So you look at me and you know this is what you're getting. I've been like, we didn't talk about it, but I have served in every capacity that a prosecutor can serve in this community.
Yeah, you
Right?
did, yeah.
You know what you're getting with me,
Right.
right? You want to hire someone who is new, maybe you can train them, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, okay, maybe it's a disaster, who knows? Or do you want someone who understands this community, has been here for a very long time,
Right.
who's been doing this at a very high level,
And that's what I was going with. And that's
Right.
exactly
or
right.
do you want something else?
Yeah. So, again, here we go. I know one thing. I know there was a couple of people that were on the show tonight that said, Brian Kramer's got my vote. I know Mitchell Gunner. Do you know Mitchell?
Mitchell and I go back.
Yeah, you and Mitchell go way back.
Mitch was responsible for my office for many years.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he would always come by. He was always come by and see me, and he would chat with me. And I was the executive director at the time.
Right.
We talk about that.
Right.
So I was the director of the office at the time, before I was the state attorney, and so he would always help us with the things that he was really specialized at.
Yeah.
He had a lot of specialized knowledge in electrical stuff.
Yes, he sure does.
That he could fix that other people in the county maybe couldn't fix, that type of thing. So we had a good time when he worked for us.
Very sharp, very smart. And again, I think you knew that he has a racing background, loves to race, goes out there and drag races whenever that's scheduled, and they got racing going on. Like I said, he's got his own little podcast now on the Spot Motorsports Media. This Thursday night at 7 p.m. You can join Mitchell Gunner and Robert as they are going to be talking. I forgot who his special guest was that he told me, but he's got somebody that's Brody Gunner. Brody, his nephew. Yes, I've seen that. His nephew will be coming on. He races Legends cars.
Okay.
And let me tell you something. This kid is 16, now 17 years old, I do believe now. And this kid can drive. We told him when he was 13 when he first came on this show. And we said, man, you're going to be a NASCAR driver eventually. And, man, he's working his way up towards that, man. He's winning these big races up there, and he's racing against grown men. And he's out driving some of these guys. So, again, Brody Gunner is going to be his special guest. I'm going to watch that show. We don't have trivia that night, so I definitely want to watch. Yeah, no trivia because they got a party going on over at the grill. But anyway, we're going to be watching that show. Tune in on the Spot Motorsports Media with Mitchell Gunner. You do know he's running for office, right?
I do.
Yeah, so school board member. Yeah. So hopefully we've endorsed him. He's one of us, and we know Mitchell. We know what he's about. We know his background. So we fully endorse Mitchell, and we hope that he gets elected as a school board member. But again, that's to be seen. You got to go out and vote to do that, right?
Got to go out and campaign.
You got to go out and campaign, which he's been doing a lot of. I know that so sometimes we want to come on here and be a special guest with us. And David, I'm out there campaigning. I'm out there going door to door. I'm handing out, this or doing that or putting a sign in somebody's yard. And he's doing a really good job. So we wish Mr. well. We wish you well, sir. And if you ever want to come back on.
Come back whenever you need me.
Absolutely. So we'll reach out to you. Again, you'll be able to watch this. If your family didn't get a chance to watch it tonight or whatever, you'll be able to see this replay live after we're done with the show here in just a couple of minutes. Yeah. And it'll be on YouTube tomorrow night at 7 o'clock as Austin Stevens will download that show on to YouTube. David, any final thoughts before we shut down?
Man, I am just so appreciative for you to show up tonight.
Oh, absolutely.
And spend your time with us. Thank you, Brian, very much.
Can't tell
Good
you
luck on your election. I think you got a good chance.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we was when Dan called me and talked to me about that, and I've told you I was very excited because we like to have any guest on, but when you get the state attorney on here, at least for for this circuit, it's. I like to hear what's going on. It is a big deal, and you like to hear what's going on. What's happening, and I think this gentleman right here said everything that he could say, about what he's done and why he's looking to seek re-election. And I can come up with one word for sure, and that's experience. And the second word is knowledge. So experience and knowledge combined, that gets you a long ways. I don't know anything about this other candidate. I'll probably research it because I want to see what's going on. So I'll probably research it and, banter back and forth. That's what we've done that. We put, hey, Brian Kramer's experience and then this guy and see and balance it out and see, what we think of each candidate. And that's how we go about it.
Yeah, our job is to give the community, our viewers, the opportunity.
And that's it.
That's right.
That's all we can do. You know what I mean? We've sat here, and I don't think anybody's ever bashed us, and that's a good thing about, hey, we're pulling for this candidate, that candidate, because we have an open forum. We throw it out there. Hey, you want to come on this show? Hey, all you got to do is get a hold of one of us, and we'll put you on the show.
Just for saying that, I gotta correct you.
Okay.
We did get bashed one time.
Oh, was it one time?
The one that sticks in my mind, and that was a county commissioner.
Oh, the Mickey Mouse Club.
The Mickey Mouse.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that, Brian. I'll have to tell you that other story later. That'll be another time. But anyway, that was good. No, I forgot about that.
The subject
that we were talking about. It wasn't anything politically. It was the subject that we were talking about. And if you probably think back, you'll probably know what we're talking about.
Well, I say if he's calling us the Mickey Mouse Club, he's watching us.
He's watching us, right? So, yeah, there you go. All right. On behalf of, again, Brian, thank you for coming coming out. And again, you can watch this show right after we're done back on Facebook. It'll be on the Spot with David Rogers. You can go back there and watch that, the replay of that. It'll look live to you, or you can wait for the YouTube version. That'll be out tomorrow night by 7 o'clock as Stevens downloads that. David, again, any final thing, anything that you want to say besides what you said, Mr. Kramer?
Yeah, excellent show.
Excellent show. On behalf of the missing Byron Bagwell, the missing Austin Stevens, the producer and director that is here, the Dancing Destroyer, Super Dave Holland, I'm David Rogers, creator and host. Glad that you was able to join us this Tuesday night. Our special guest, Mr. Brian Kramer. Thank him for coming, and again, I want to thank you for coming out and joining us, and hopefully we can have you again. We'll be back next Tuesday night at 7 p.m., and David, I think we may have another guest next Tuesday. I think Byron was telling me so. Hey, we got guests abroad, and we're just continuing to do our show. Thank you, guys. Have a great evening. Have a great week. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next week. God bless you. Thank you.